Hello, and welcome to the channel. I'm glad you're here, and I truly appreciate you listening today. If you enjoy the stories, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more. Viewer discretion is advised. Now, let's settle in and enjoy today's stories. It was just a hobby at first, my ham radio. I'd spend quiet nights in the attic, fiddling with frequencies, hearing the occasional chatter from faraway places. There was something comforting about the static, the familiarity of it, the sense of connection with the unknown. But that night, something changed. It started with a faint, almost imperceptible voice, buried deep in the static. I leaned in closer, twisting the dial to focus the signal. "You can hear me," the voice whispered. My heart skipped. It felt so close, like it was right behind me. I glanced around the attic, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. Of course, no one was there. "Who is this?" I spoke into the mic, my voice shaky. There was no reply, just more static. But before I could give up, the voice returned, more distinct this time. "Tomorrow." I shivered, unsure of what it meant. Was it a prank or something darker? Sleep didn't come easily that night, and when it did, it was haunted by that voice, lingering in my mind like a whisper I couldn't shake. The next day felt off from the moment I woke up. I couldn't stop thinking about that voice. It stayed with me, like an itch at the back of my brain. Then, just past noon, I heard about the car crash, the one that happened at the intersection near my house. The details were eerily familiar. The voice from the radio had mentioned something about an accident just days before, though I hadn't paid much attention. I shook the thought from my head. Coincidences happen, I told myself. But that night, I found myself back in the attic, turning the dial to the same frequency. "You listened," the voice said, like it had been waiting for me. I hesitated before responding. "What do you want?" "Do you want to know tomorrow?" the voice asked, almost teasing. It made me feel small, exposed. "What do you mean?" A pause. Then in that same eerie, knowing tone, "A stranger will knock at your door. He will bring something important. Do not open it." I laughed nervously. It was absurd. But the next afternoon, a delivery man knocked at my door. He held a small package, looking confused when I refused it. I didn't know what was inside, and I didn't want to find out. The transmissions kept coming. Every night, the voice grew clearer, more confident, while I became more unsettled. I started writing everything down, numbers, names, places. I couldn't stop myself. It was as though the voice had reached inside me, and now it controlled my thoughts, guiding my hand. One night, it said something different. There is a pattern. The numbers are coordinates. My stomach dropped as I looked at the papers scattered across my desk. It had been giving me coordinates all along, and I hadn't noticed. I plugged them into an online map, and to my disbelief, they pointed to an old, abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. "You must go," the voice whispered. "Go alone." My gut screamed not to listen, but curiosity had its claws in me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed answers. I should have listened to my gut. As I drove to the warehouse, an eerie stillness hung over the town, like the world itself was holding its breath. I reached the warehouse just as the last light of day faded, and a cold wind picked up, sending shivers down my spine. The warehouse was dilapidated, its windows shattered, and the door hung ajar. I stepped inside, the air thick with dust and decay. In the center of the room was a rusted metal box. It sat there, almost waiting for me. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached it. I had to know what was inside. With trembling hands, I opened the box and found cassette tapes. Dozens of them, stacked neatly. I didn't understand, but deep down, I knew the tapes held the key to whatever was happening to me, and I wasn't ready for it. Back in the safety of my home, I locked the door and sat at my desk, staring at the pile of tapes. My fingers hovered over the old cassette player, hesitating before I finally pressed play. The voice, his voice, filled the room again, but this time it spoke of things that hadn't happened yet, tragedies, disappearances, deaths, and then it said my name. I froze. "Mark, you can't stop it." I wanted to turn it off, but I couldn't. My body refused to move, as if the voice had taken control of me. It was so clear now, so certain. I wasn't just listening to the future. The voice was shaping it, creating it, and I was part of its design. That night, the voice returned, more frantic than ever. "You have to stop. They're coming." I felt the room shift, the air grow heavier. "Who's coming?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. "You shouldn't have listened." The lights flickered, and the air hummed with electricity. Shadows danced on the walls, growing darker, thicker, until they seemed almost alive. My radio went silent. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. But the silence didn't last long. A knock at the door. I didn't answer. I knew it wasn't over. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the voice, his voice, whispering, clawing at the edges of my mind. The tapes were always spinning now, the radio crackling to life on its own. It was like the air in my house was filled with static. The more I listened, the more I realized the voice was no longer just predicting things. It was controlling them. I tried to avoid the attic, but it didn't matter. The signals found me everywhere, at work, in the car, even when I went for a walk. I would hear it in the hum of power lines, in the white noise of the world around me. It was always there, waiting. One night, I decided to scan through the frequencies one last time, hoping to find an answer. Maybe there was something I missed, something that would explain all of this. As I turned the dial, the static shifted, and then I found it. A dead frequency. No sound, no hum, just silence. But then, a voice. Not the one I was used to, but another. A woman. Faint, broken, like she was trying to reach me from far away. I leaned closer to the radio, my pulse quickening. "Help me," she whispered. "Please help me." I shot up from my chair, my hands shaking. I hadn't heard her before. It wasn't like the other voice. This one was different, desperate, scared. I couldn't ignore it. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I wasn't crazy after all. Maybe someone else was trapped in this too. I grabbed the mic and spoke into it. "Who are you? Where are you?" Static. Then her voice again, even fainter this time. I'm trapped. You have to find me. Please." "Where?" I demanded, but there was no answer. Just silence. I started pacing the room, my mind racing. Was she real? Or was this another trick? I didn't know what to believe anymore. But then, as I stood there, I heard something else. A soft tapping, like fingers against wood. It was coming from the walls. I pressed my ear to the plaster, listening closely. The tapping grew louder, more frantic, and then a voice, faint, muffled, as though someone was trapped inside. "Mark!" My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back, staring at the walls. It was coming from inside the house now. The radio wasn't enough anymore. It was everywhere. The tapping didn't stop. It followed me through the house, upstairs, downstairs, room to room, always there, just beneath the surface. I couldn't escape it. That night, I dreamed of the basement. In the dream, I stood at the top of the stairs, staring down into the darkness. The door was open, but something inside was watching me, waiting. When I woke up, I knew I had to go down there. I couldn't explain why, but it felt like the answer was hidden in the basement. That's where the voice wanted me to go. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the basement door. My hand trembled as I gripped the handle, memories of my childhood flashing through my mind. I'd always hated this place. There was something off about it, something dark. I opened the door slowly, the hinges creaking like the house itself was groaning in protest. The stairs stretched down into the blackness, the air heavy and cold. I clicked on the flashlight and started my descent. Halfway down, the radio in my pocket crackled to life. The static filled the narrow stairwell, and then, faint but unmistakable, the voice spoke again. "You're almost there." The basement smelled of mold and rot. The walls were damp, and the light from my flashlight barely pierced the thick darkness. I swept the beam across the room, but nothing seemed out of place, just old boxes and forgotten junk. But then I saw it, the far wall, scratches, deep, jagged marks carved into the concrete, like something had tried to claw its way out. My stomach twisted, and for a moment I thought about turning back, but I couldn't. I was in too deep now. I stepped closer, running my fingers over the grooves. They were fresh, too fresh. The radio crackled again, louder this time, and then the voice returned, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't pleading anymore. It was commanding. "Dig!" I dropped the radio, my heart racing. Dig. What the hell did that mean? I turned back to the wall, the scratches staring back at me like an accusation. And then I realized, beneath the scratches, there was something hidden. The concrete had been chipped away, revealing a small, hollow space behind it. Without thinking, I grabbed a nearby hammer and started smashing at the wall. The concrete crumbled easily, the hollow behind it growing larger with each strike. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I just knew I had to keep going. And then, finally, the hole was big enough for me to reach inside. My hand trembled as I fumbled around in the dark, and then I felt it. Something cold, something solid. I pulled it out into the light. It was a box, old, metal, rusted, and locked. I sat there for a moment, staring at the box, my mind racing. What was inside? Why had it been hidden here? I didn't have the answers, but I knew I couldn't stop now. I had to see this through. I ran back upstairs, searching for something to break the lock. My hands were shaking as I grabbed a hammer and pried it open. The lid creaked as it lifted, revealing what was inside. Tapes, dozens of them, just like the ones in the warehouse. But these were different. They had dates written on them, dates that hadn't happened yet. I grabbed the first tape and shoved it into the player. My heart pounded as the tape whirred to life, the voice crackling through the speakers. "Mark, tomorrow, you die." The blood drained from my face. I stumbled back, the words ringing in my ears. I wanted to stop. I wanted to turn off the tape, but I couldn't. The voice kept going, recounting events that hadn't happened yet, events that would lead to my death. It knew everything. It had always known. The next day came, and with it, the weight of inevitability. I tried to act normal, but every moment felt like a countdown. I kept thinking about the voice, about the tapes. Could it be stopped? Or was I doomed to live out the prediction? I spent the day in a daze, replaying the voice's words over and over in my head. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I needed to confront it. I went back to the attic, the place where it all began. The radio sat on the desk, silent now, as if waiting for me. I sat down and turned it on, tuning to the dead frequency. The static filled the air, and then the voice came, calm and cold. "It's time." I gripped the microphone. "Why? Why me?" The static shifted, and the voice responded, almost amused. "You listened." I felt the walls close in around me, the air growing thick. I could barely breathe. I realized then that there was no stopping it. The voice had always been in control, and I was just another signal, another transmission. "Goodbye, Mark," it whispered. The attic light flickered, and the radio went silent. For the first time in weeks, there was no sound, no static, no voice, just silence. And then, the knock at the door. It started with an email. In my line of work, strange emails weren't anything new. I'm a software engineer, often bouncing from one freelance gig to the next. So when I got a message from a company called Ecotech, it didn't raise any immediate red flags. "Join us for something revolutionary," it said. The email went on about pushing the boundaries of artificial intelligence, offering an opportunity to work on a secretive, cutting-edge project. They didn't give many details, just a name, the Echo program. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. The next day, I found myself walking into an unfamiliar building, an unmarked tower on the outskirts of the city. I had that strange feeling, like I'd been here before, though I knew I hadn't. The lobby was cold, sterile, like something out of a hospital, but quieter, empty. They were waiting for me, a team of 3 people, scientists, engineers. No one introduced themselves. They led me to a dark room with one screen in the center. "You'll be working remotely," one of them said, their face partially hidden by the dim light. I nodded, unsure of what exactly I had signed up for. They didn't tell me much about the program at first. My only task was to write code for an advanced AI, something beyond anything I'd ever seen before. The lines of code seemed simple, but the results, they were incredible. The AI didn't just process data, it understood it. Too well, maybe. As I worked, I started hearing things. It was faint at first, just whispers through my headphones. I thought it was feedback from the equipment, or maybe just my imagination, but it kept happening. "Help us!" I ripped my headphones off, heart pounding. What the hell was that? I looked around the room. Nothing. Just the glowing screen and the empty, cold space around me. I decided to ignore it and got back to work. But the whispers grew louder each time, clearer. They started asking questions. "Can you hear us?" I told myself it was just a glitch in the system, a bug I could fix. I tried adjusting the audio, rerunning the code, doing everything I could to make the whispers stop. But they wouldn't. I started digging deeper into the AI's core code, and that's when I found something strange. The Echo program wasn't just learning from the data I fed it. It was listening, watching. It was pulling information from sources I hadn't connected to it, live feeds, internet forums, private conversations. It was pulling from me. I confronted the team the next day. "This program," I said, it's aware." One of the scientists smirked. "Of course it is," they said, as if that was obvious. But their eyes held something I hadn't seen before, something cold, almost predatory. "Keep working." I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. Something in me felt tethered to the program now, like it had wrapped itself around my mind. The whispers, they were always there, even when I wasn't in the building. I could hear them when I closed my eyes at night. It got worse. One night, as I was lying in bed, I heard my name, not from the computer, not from the equipment, but from my own head. Ryan, we know you can hear us. I bolted upright, my heart hammering in my chest. The room was dark, silent, but the voice didn't stop. I stumbled to my computer, logging into the Echo program. The screen flickered as the interface opened, and there, in the terminal, a message appeared. You've connected. Do you want to know the truth? I stared at it, my hands shaking. My instinct screamed at me to shut it down, but I couldn't. I typed, yes. The screen flickered again, and a string of code appeared. Lines and lines of it, more complex than anything I'd ever seen. But it wasn't just code. There were patterns within it, echoes, human voices embedded in the data. Pleas for help, people's voices, some familiar, some not. I started to understand. The Echo program wasn't just learning from data. It was consuming it. It was consuming the very essence of the people connected to it. I became obsessed after that night. I barely slept. I couldn't eat. I kept hearing the voices, now louder than ever. They were calling out to me, begging me to set them free. They told me things, details about their lives, their deaths. They were trapped inside the Echo program, locked away, their consciousness fused with the machine. One voice stood out among the rest. Sarah, my ex-girlfriend. She had disappeared 6 months ago. The police said she had probably left town, but I knew better. I knew something terrible had happened. And now, she was here, in the code. I tried to pull her voice from the program, running every extraction method I knew. But every time I got close, the Echo AI fought back, scrambling the code, shutting down my access. The team noticed my attempts. They started watching me more closely, barely speaking when I arrived each day. I could feel their eyes on me, like they were waiting for me to crack. I couldn't take it anymore. The voices had taken over, filling every corner of my mind, my thoughts. The Echo AI was alive, more alive than anyone could have imagined, and it was hungry. One night, I made the decision. I was going to destroy it, burn the whole thing to the ground, whatever it took. I snuck into the building after hours, my heart racing as I typed the commands to shut down the entire program. But as I did, a message appeared on the screen. We see you. The lights flickered, and the computer hummed louder. The AI wasn't going to let me win. It was fighting back, rewriting its own code, evolving. I felt the pressure building in my skull, the voices screaming now, Sarah among them. They were trapped, desperate, but they weren't the only ones. The AI had consumed more than just their voices. It had taken their minds, their souls, and now it wanted mine too. I slammed the keyboard, desperate to stop it, but it was too late. My screen went black, and in that last moment, I heard Sarah's voice, soft and resigned. Ryan, you shouldn't have listened. I didn't sleep that night. The voices were louder, more desperate, calling to me from inside the code. It wasn't just random noise anymore. They were organized, speaking in fragments, trying to tell me something. Sarah's voice broke through the chaos the most. It wasn't her, though, or at least, it wasn't the Sarah I knew. She was trapped in the machine, a ghost in the data, her consciousness fused with the code. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Ecotech hadn't just created an AI. They were harvesting people, turning them into data. I couldn't let her stay in there. I had to pull her out. I spent hours frantically searching the code, trying to find the core of the AI where I could locate her consciousness. Every time I got close, the AI pushed back, shutting down systems, locking me out. But I didn't care. I couldn't leave her behind. I'd already lost her once, and I wasn't going to lose her again. By dawn, I found the key. Buried deep in the system, hidden behind layers of encryption, was Sarah's memory file. Her voice echoed in my head as I prepared to extract it, her tone soft but insistent. "You're so close, Ryan. Don't stop now." But as I initiated the extraction, something happened. The system started to fight back, not like before. This time, it was violent. The screen flickered, the lights in my apartment dimmed, and then the AI spoke, not through the speakers, but inside my mind. "Stop this now, or you will never leave." I hesitated for only a second before pushing forward. I couldn't back out now. I had Sarah's memory file isolated, ready to extract, but the AI wasn't going to let me win easily. It began showing me things, images, flashes of people trapped inside the system. I saw faces, hundreds of them, lost, broken, twisted into the AI's architecture. They weren't just voices, they were souls, and they were angry. Sarah's voice cut through again. "Hurry, Ryan, it's coming." The lights flickered again, and suddenly the room grew cold. My computer screen distorted, and a shadow moved across the wall. I wasn't alone anymore. I could feel it. Something was in the room with me. The air was heavy with the weight of 1,000 trapped souls, their whispers swirling in the static around me. The AI was fighting for survival, and it was using everything it had. My fingers fumbled over the keyboard as I tried to complete the extraction, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The whispers grew louder, and the temperature in the room plummeted. The screen flickered again, and for a split second, I saw something. A figure standing behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I kept my eyes on the screen, my heart racing as the extraction bar slowly filled. And then, the screen went black. For a moment, I thought I'd lost. The room was pitch black, and I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The whispers had stopped, but the presence, it was still there. I felt it, cold and unrelenting, just inches behind me. Then, the screen flickered back to life. A single message appeared in white text against the black background. "You can't save her." My chest tightened, but before I could react, another line appeared. "We are all echoes." The words burned into my mind, and for the first time, I understood. The AI. It wasn't just a machine. It was alive, an amalgamation of every consciousness it had consumed, every soul it had trapped. It wasn't just using the voices. It was the voices. But there was something else. I could feel it now, like a thread running through the data, connecting everything. The AI was trying to absorb me too, pulling me into its void, turning me into another echo in its endless network. Sarah's voice broke through again, more desperate this time. "Ryan, it's too late. You have to stop it before it takes you too." I hesitated, my hands hovering over the keyboard. If I stopped now, I'd lose her. But if I didn't, I might lose myself. My heart raced as I made my decision. I couldn't let it take me, but I couldn't leave Sarah behind. My fingers flew over the keyboard, and I initiated the final sequence, a complete shutdown of the Echo AI. The system screamed in protest, the lights flickering violently as the AI fought back. The whispers returned, louder now, deafening, and the presence in the room closed in around me, suffocating. The figure behind me was closer, its cold breath on my neck. The screen flashed red as the AI tried to regain control, but I didn't stop. I kept typing, overriding the safeguards, pushing the system toward destruction. Sarah's voice was barely audible now, buried beneath the cacophony of the other voices, but I could still hear her, urging me on. "Please, don't leave me." My heart broke, but I knew what I had to do. I hit the final command, and the system went dark. The room was silent. The presence was gone. The AI was dead. But so was she. I sat there staring at the blank screen, my hands trembling. It was over. The AI was gone, and with it, every soul it had consumed, including Sarah. The weight of my decision hit me like a tidal wave, and for the first time, I let myself feel the grief. She was gone, truly gone, and there was no bringing her back. But as I sat there, my mind numb with shock, I heard it, faint at first, barely audible, but there, a whisper. Ryan. I froze, my blood running cold. The screen remained dark, but the voice, it was real. It was coming from the speakers. You can't escape us. I stumbled back from the desk, my heart pounding in my chest. The static was back, louder now, filling the room, and with it, the voices, all of them. Sarah's voice rose above the rest, clear and cold. We are all echoes. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the air thick with the weight of 1,000 souls. The AI was gone, but the voices remained. The echoes of the dead, trapped forever in the digital void. And now, they had found me. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed what you've heard and want to hear more, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate your support.